Well, hello and welcome to my channel. Thank you so much for coming. My name's Lyndon. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here. And in this video, I want to look at something which strikes fear and terror into the hearts of people, especially when they're first learning the saxophone and you show them the dreaded cycle of fifths and it just looks so scary. Look at this, right? It does. It really does look really quite scary. It does. I mean, there's just no two ways about it. It does. It looks complicated and scary and you wonder, what on earth is that for? So in this video, I want to blow the fog away around the cycle of fifths, any fog that's lying around, any clutter that's lying around about it. I want to explain it really clearly for you and show you how and why we use it and what is it for and how it can become your friend, because it's a fantastic thing. Also, at the end of this video, I'm going to put a link, in fact in the description below, I'm going to put a link to where you can download this very marvelous sheet, and you can download it and print it for absolutely free from my website. So please follow that link and download it, because it's super useful. So this is the way that I describe the cycle of fifths. By the way, for all you jazz hardliners out there, it's not the only way that you can describe the cycle of fifths. It's not a perfect way, it's just my way. And why do I explain it in this way? Well, because most people get it if I explain it like this. So let's think about upstairs in my bedroom, I have a wardrobe. It's a double wardrobe, it has bifold doors, and here I've got my shirts and here I've got my jackets hanging up, and it's got 3 drawers below it, and in the top drawer I've got my socks and I've got my underpants, and then beneath there I've got t-shirts folded up, and in the bottom drawer I've got jeans folded up. Now why do we bother with a wardrobe? Well, if like my teenage son, actually he's much better now, but like a teenager, if I got all of my laundry together and just chucked it in the middle of the room, it would be really hard to access things when I needed them. If I needed some matching socks or some matching underwear, I might struggle to find things. So it's just really, you can think of the cycle of fifths as a wardrobe for your scales. Let's have a look. If you have a look at the cycle of fifths, do you notice that you've got all your sharps on one side and all the flats on another side? Well, that's kind of cool for starters. You've got socks in one department and underpants in the other. All of these sharps are on one side and all of the flats are on the other. And it's called the cycle of fifths because C lives at the top, and C is kind of like the pure holy scale that has no sharps or flats in it at all, and that lives at the top of the cycle of fifths. Now, if you've looked at one of my other videos, if you have a look at the construction of a major scale, all major scales have the same construction, i.e. tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. Now, if that doesn't make any sense to you, I'm going to put a link in the description below to go to a video where we explain exactly the structure of a major scale. Because if you go 5 notes up from C, so C, D, E, F, G, go around the cycle and you create a new scale using tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone, you get a scale that has 1 sharp. All of the notes are identical to C major except for 1 note, which is the F sharp. Otherwise the sequence remains the same. Now if I do that again and go up 5 notes from G, so G, A, B, C, D, and I create the same sequence, tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone, I will end up with a major scale starting on D, and that has 2 sharps in it. And this is why it's called the cycle of fifths, because every subsequent note, A is the 5th note of D, and E is the 5th note of A, and B is the 5th note of E, and so on and so forth. As it goes round the cycle, E is the 5th note of A flat, and B flat is the 5th note of E flat, and so on and so forth. And that is why it's called the cycle of fifths. Sometimes, however, it is also called the cycle of fourths, because if you go anti-clockwise around, then the sequence changes and F is the fourth note of C. And if you create a scale using tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone, starting on F, you'll get a scale that has one flat. And then if you go four notes up from F, so F, G, A, F, G, A, B flat, then B flat has two flats in it, B flat and E flat, and you've got a scale that has two flats, and then three flats and four flats and five flats and six flats. So it's laying out the scales in a really logical, sequential order. Now, I want to tell you something else about music and the cycle of fifths. What human brains seem to like is sameness with a little bit of difference. And if you get that balance right, human brains will love this. Now in the UK, we have a soap opera, really well known. It's been going for decades. It's called EastEnders. But if you take any soap opera that has been running for a long time, the same thing will apply. So in EastEnders, you have the same cast, more or less. They change a little bit over the years, but more or less the same cast in the same location with the same name of the show and the same theme song. Don't change the same theme song because people really don't like that. And more or less a very similar story every week, but every week the story slightly changes. So you've got a lot of sameness with a little bit of difference. Now if you made it loads of difference, like in other words, if you changed the cast every week and you changed the name of the show every week and you changed the location and the theme song and the story, it just wouldn't work because there'd be no continuity between all of the episodes. You need to have that sameness there. So these scales that live next door to each other have all of the same notes except for one note. So you've got lots of sameness with a little bit of difference. So how does this fascinating information help me as a sax player? Well, if I make a musical shape in the key of D, actually to be super specific, I'm in D7, but I'm in the key of D. Now if I go to G and make the same shape, and then back to D again, now I'm going to go to A and make a similar shape, and then go to G and make a similar shape, back to D again, and your brain goes, yum, 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 thank you very much. That makes complete musical sense to me. I really enjoyed that lovely package. It's like a perfect little musical statement that you've made, and it just makes perfect sense. So if music changes key, it's not guaranteed, but if it changes key, the chances of it changing to one of its neighbours on the cycle of fifths is super high. It's not guaranteed, but it's super, super high. It's highly likely that in some way there's some relationship between the key that you're in and the key that you're changing into is going to be one of the neighbours on the cycle of fifths. It just is, and it happens all the time. And especially if you have a look at chord charts, you'll see this sequence like D minor, G7, C major is a 2-5-1, and they just kind of fit together really, really, really well. So how does this help me practically? Well, if I'm in a band and the band suddenly changes key and I don't know previously what the key change is, instead of thinking to myself, oh, well, they've changed key, who knows, it could be one of 11 keys. No, I'm going to think chances are, it's not guaranteed, but chances are they've probably moved into one of the neighbouring keys on the cycle of fifths. So it's really, 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 really handy to know the cycle of fifths. And if you're writing music and you're in a particular key and you want to move to another key, it makes sense to move around the cycle. It just harmonically really works because you're changing things, but you're not changing things so dramatically that you get like this massive contrast. Now that's not to say that a tune can't go from D into A flat or something, but be quite honest, it's unlikely. It's much more likely to go from D into A or D into G. It's likely. It's not guaranteed, but it's likely. Having the cycle of fifths printed out and put on your wall is really great if you're learning your scales, because you can work out which ones you can have a look and visually see which ones you feel comfortable with and which ones you don't feel so comfortable with. And supposing that you don't feel very comfortable with D flat, it's usually these ones down here that people struggle with, and they perceive these scales as more difficult. They're not more difficult, it's just that you learn all of these ones first and you learn these ones last. And if there was an invisible accountant who'd been keeping note of all of the times that you've played C major, you would see a big, very likely, you'd see that there is a big discrepancy between the amount of times that you've played C and the amount of times that you've played D flat. And so your brain, trying to work out why D flat feels so uncomfortable, will come up with the conclusion that D flat major is more difficult. And it isn't really, because there are no difficult scales, there's only unfamiliar ones. So here's the thing, if you practice D flat major, A flat major and G flat or F sharp major are identical except for one note each. So if you really hammer into this scale hard, this scale looks round at this scale and says, have you seen what he's been doing to, or she has been doing to D flat major? And then when you go to work on one of those scales and you get ready for a battle with those scales, they go, no, we don't want any trouble. We're just exactly the same as D major. Here, have the sharps and flats. You'll find it so much easier to hit these scales if you've been working on that, because a lot of the territory that you're covering is identical. Let me show you one more thing about the cycle of fifths, which is just kind of weird. C major has no sharps and flats. G major has one sharp, it's F sharp. And D major has two sharps, it's F sharp and C sharp. And A major has three sharps, F sharp, C sharp and G sharp. It's kind of mathematically beautiful. E major has four sharps, F sharp, C sharp, G sharp and D sharp, and so it goes on. It actually does work the other way as well. F has one flat, it's B flat, and B flat has two flats, it's B flat and E flat. E flat has three flats, B flat, E flat and A flat, and so it goes on. A flat has four, it has B flat, E flat, A flat and D flat. So they're all kind of connected, they're all overlapping, and this is why the cycle of fifths is such a fantastic tool. Very last thing, what are these green letters on the inside? Those green letters on the inside are what's known as the relative minors, and you'll often see that on a cycle of fifths. It's a really good thing to know, and those relative minors, in the case of C, and this applies to all of the scales, well, A is the sixth note of C. So if you ran the scale of C from A, you would get A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, and that scale would be A minor 7, and it would be known as C's relative minor, and in jazz they would call that the Aeolian scale. And these relative minors share a key signature. So if you saw a piece of music that had no sharps or flats as the key signature, you might instantly think that you're in C major, but you might not be. You might be in A minor, and that's really handy to know. So the relative minor of G major is the relative minor of G major is E minor. Sorry, I have a spider on my stand which kind of distracted me. E minor, and D's relative minor is B minor, and so on and so forth. So that's really good information to know. Right, that is the cycle of fifths. Go and download it, print it off, keep it with you all the time. The cycle of fifths is nothing to be scared of. It's just a way of laying out the scales in a really nice and logical way. And it also helps understanding the way that tunes are built. So I hope that explanation was useful for you. Please comment and let me know if my explanation helped, if this kind of shed any light on the cycle of fifths or not. Do let me know, and if you've got any suggestions about videos that you'd like me to make, please let me know also, and thank you for liking and subscribing and buying me coffees. That's enormously helpful. I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Bye bye.